I'd worked on projects through school and done small stuff, but then to be able to live for 6 weeks in Papua New Guinea with Jared and his family and just grow in every capacity, like just to pick his brain and to be able to every single day pick up a camera and just go film or be editing or whatever. And that was probably where God started to light my heart more.
Welcome to the Children of Light podcast. In this episode, Hursty speaks to Jaeden Moore, a documentary filmmaker from New Zealand, about dreams, storytelling, and the adventure of following God's calling. Enjoy the episode.
I'm actually just excited to get to know you because I don't really know you.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun conversation.
I feel like we've purposely not discussed a lot of things. We wanted just to thank you for being our first guest. So as you know, obviously Dan found you on Instagram and we were drawn by the fact that you have a passion for creativity and filmmaking, but you're intentionally using that to serve God. And that's what we're all about. So welcome from all the way from New Zealand.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So tell me a little bit about like New Zealand and where you're from and what brought you here.
Yeah. I'm from the Tron, Hamilton, which is about an hour, give or take, south of Auckland. So I'm North Island based. And it's cool. I've lived in Hamilton my whole life. I love it. I enjoy it. It gets a little bit of flack in New Zealand as a space, but that's okay. Shout out Hamilton. So I've been in Australia for a couple of weeks now, just hanging out. Came over for Red Frogs for schoolies and to be on the media team for that, which was epic. And then I've just been hanging out and just been like, hey, God, where do you want to lead for the next week and a half? What do you want me to go do? It's been cool.
That's great. So like you do filmmaking. What does like a typical day look like for you?
A typical day in the life of Jaeden. I'd say there's not really a typical day, to be entirely honest. Like I joke with my friends, it's like, some people have their job and then they do the occasional side quest. I just feel like I only do the side quests. And so it looks different all the time. But I'd say spending time with God somewhere in the day. By no means is that a habit that is probably as strong as I would like it to be, but it's growing. And then, I'll either get into some post-production on some projects or probably connecting with people. I'm a very big people person. And so there's always someone I'm catching up with for coffee or someone I'm meeting with or connecting with, which is cool. And then just crack into whatever's on the card.
Yeah. Meeting lots of people.
Yeah.
Have you always would you consider yourself like an extrovert?
I would say now, yeah. I don't think I've always been an extrovert.
Yeah.
Growing up I was pretty shy, to be honest. And then it would have been in my later years of high school. In New Zealand, we go to year 13 rather than year 12. So I mean, our year 13 is your year 12 equivalent, but we just call it year 13. So my year 11, which would be grade 10 here, I think it would be. That's when, I would say I probably started to come out of my shell more. And then, it kind of happened through school leadership opportunities. In my second to last year of high school, I had a teacher who came to me and he said, hey, I saw you didn't apply for any leadership roles this year. Why not? And I was like, me, why would I apply, sort of thing. And then he was like, no, I really reckon you should. You should apply for roles next year in your final year of high school. And so then that probably shifted things a bit for me to realize, hey, like, you can actually go for this, you can do this. And then along with my whole faith journey at that point of God growing me and starting to work on character and identity and things that I struggled with and process those, I think I became a lot more extroverted. I would most certainly have been considered the teacher's pet. I was very much friends with all my teachers, which is cool. But then from there, just started to become real social, connect with a bunch of people, and then it's kind of grown since.
So did you have a faith growing up?
Yeah, I did. So I've grown up in a Christian household my whole life. My parents are going to church. My grandparents on both sides of my family, all been in church my whole life, which is such a big blessing. Like that's been something I've only sort of realized in the last few years, how blessed I am to have that sort of family legacy. But then it would have been about the start of middle school, intermediate for me, where I'd gone through some hard things as a kid, and so wasn't really like, didn't have close friends per se. And then going into intermediate, went to a new school, and I was like, well, this is my opportunity just to kind of fit in with whoever, do whatever, try and find the friends. And then tried to do that for a year and a half. Well, no, it would have been a couple of years actually. Just trying to fit in and like almost putting a mask on to be whoever I needed to be in those environments. And then going into high school, so I was in a school that went right through, so I didn't change schools, but going into youth group at church, that was the first time I felt like I properly belonged for who I was without having to pretend to be someone else.
Yeah.
And so then in that space, that's where my faith also really started to develop, because I was like, hey, this is actually something for me. So I'd grown up going to church on a Sunday. That was what we did as a family. That was normal, all those sort of things. But yeah, it would have been when I was probably 14 or 15 in that age group. That age range was when it really became my own faith.
Yep.
And I was like, hey, God, you're real. Like, yeah. And just light me on fire for you.
That's great. I mean, like, obviously I grew up in a Christian family as well. And everyone who does grow up going to church has to make the decision whether it's for them or not.
Yeah.
Like, they have to have a moment where they're going to decide to be a Christian or they're not.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Being in a youth group, obviously surrounded by a good community, is just a great way to just find out God for yourself.
Yeah, I think it's so important having good people around. Yeah.
Well, that's good that you grew up with a good community
Yeah.
like that. So you obviously do filmmaking as your career. When did you get into that?
Yeah, film started probably more recently. I'd say for me, gosh. Well, yes and no. I've always been creative and camera related growing up. I was never that kid. You know how some kids, like, they have the home videos of them with their cousins when they were like 8, just making movies and whatnot. Like, that was never me. But I have little snippets where I'd work on different projects or whatnot. And then it would have been in my sort of later years of high school, probably so similarly age ranged to when I'd class myself to have come out of my shell socially. Not that I think they're necessarily correlated, but in that similar space of time, I was starting to do, we had a subject called media studies at school. And so I was starting to do media studies quite a bit more and really loved it. Never thought of it to be more than just a subject at school, but I really enjoyed picking up a camera, filming some different projects, working on different bits and pieces. And then it would have been in my final year of high school. I'd done the assignments the year earlier. And so I kind of had some free space. And my media studies teacher, who I was quite close with, she was like, hey, you should make a documentary. And I was like, well, I don't know about that. And at the time, I had been unpacking all these big thoughts about academic validation and perfectionism. And those were quite real things to me that I was sort of beginning to unpack. Why do I feel so drawn to achieving high grades? Why do I place so much pressure on myself? And why do I not even in a way celebrate them, but why do I just feel like that's the bar that I have to meet? And so I'd sit in class and I'd chat about this with my media studies teacher, and she was like, oh, you should turn this into a documentary.
Wow.
And I was like, no, I couldn't do that. No way. And then that happened for, I want to say, a couple months. She kept asking me, hey, how's your projects coming along? How's your film coming along? And I just kept saying, nah, it's not happening. And after a couple months, she's like, how's your film coming along? And I was like, oh, okay, I've started. And then really loved it. Like, it was a cool process to, like, one, just learn and grow personally myself as I unpacked these big topics and talked with other high achieving students and other young professionals, talked with a psychologist as well, did an interview with her, and just sort of unpacking these topics. I found that I really loved having these conversations and being able to capture and unpack this story. It was so deep and real. And then through that, God really lit a passion in my heart for telling stories that way. And then it was probably about halfway through the year. I'd thought always that I was going to go study business. That was where I thought I was going to go. And I've always been entrepreneurial and always been inclined in that way. But business at university is a very like academic corporate pathway. And so that's what I thought I was going to study because that was the right option. And then I remember sitting down with this media studies teacher, and she asked me, she's like, oh, what are you going to study again? And I was like, oh, I'm going to do business, going to do this. And she's like, oh, yeah. And then she's like, oh, how's your film coming along? And I just like lit up and just got so excited, being like, this. I had this conversation, tried this new technique, did this. And then she was just like, hold on a minute. Like, look at yourself right now. Why are you studying business? Like, you just talk about it like, oh, you're going to do business, you're going to tick the box, you're going to do the right thing, you're going to go next. But the moment you start to talk about film, there's just something that lights you up. She's like, follow that, follow what lights you up. And she wasn't a Christian teacher, but God spoke so clearly through her to me that I hadn't even considered at that point film as a pathway. But in that moment, I was like, oh, maybe there is something here. Maybe this is more than just a little fun high school project I'm working on in my final year of school. And so then started to pray on it, started to be like, okay, God, if this is something, what is this? And at that point connected with, we had a Christian film studio who we supported as a church. And so in chatting with mum and dad, they're like, well, if this is actually something you're considering, like, let's chat with some people who actually do film and see their thoughts, and you can ask them some questions about it. And so went and connected with Jared, who runs Fantail Studios, the studio we're connected with at church, and then sat down with him for a Zoom call. And he's like, oh, I've never met a young kid who likes documentaries. They want to do music videos or films. And I was like, oh, well, I just love telling people stories. Like, I think it's so cool to be able to tell real stories about real things. And so then had that conversation and was like, well, what would you recommend? And had some conversations there, and then came to a place where I was like, cool, I'm not going to go to uni. I'm not going to study. And I thought I'm either going to go to Bible college and do film on the side, or I'm just going to give God a year I was just going to teach myself film online. I think probably at a similar time, God had also told me at church, he's like, hey, I've given you a gift of storytelling. And over these next 3 years, I'm going to be the one to teach you how to tell stories.
That's cool.
And so I didn't know what that was going to look like. I didn't know what that pathway looked like. But I was like, okay, cool. If that's what you want to do, then let's go for it. Like,
that's great.
Yeah. So that was where film began for me. Yeah.
That's so awesome. So you were like doing a documentary in school. That was very young.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
It was a big project looking back on it. It's like, I think I did, I want to say 5 or 6 interviews, plus an interview with a psychologist that was more of a back and forth conversation. And then had my own talking to camera pieces, and then cut down what would have been 6 hours of footage, cut down into a final documentary. Was 26 minutes.
Yeah.
And I look back and I laugh at it now. Like, it was cool and still a cool project. Still interesting insight, but just seeing how much I've grown even over the last few years has been cool.
And so you felt like this teacher helped you unlock your passion. But at this point, you've sort of found your faith as well. So you feel like that, like, you knew that God had given you this passion and creativity.
Yeah. It had definitely been a journey for me to call myself creative as well. So growing up, mum was an artist, dad ran a business. And so mum has always painted, drawn, like always been that sort of physical, creative mediums. And I did bits and pieces growing up, always enjoyed crafts, always enjoyed like coloring in books and those sort of things, but probably never considered myself creative in that sense, because I was like, oh, I can't really draw well and I can't really paint well. But then, like I mentioned before, always being entrepreneurial, I was always doing little side hustles and startups and different bits and pieces. Hence, I was going to go into business and wanted to go that direction. But I saw a lot more of that from dad than I did creativity from mum. And I kind of limited what I thought creativity was, which looking back now, I'm like, oh, I was creative the entire time growing up. And to be in business, you have to be creative as well. But I think it wasn't until, I'd even say these last few years of studying at uni, that I've seen or even being able to like sort of be like, no, I am a creative. And so it was interesting in that sort of phase of now stepping away from business as a pathway, though one day there'll still be business very much involved, but stepping away from business as an academic pathway into something more creative, to be like, oh, interesting, like this is somewhere God's called me to. This is not a new thing, like it's a new space, but creativity as a whole isn't a new thing on my life. Like I've been creative my whole life. And then now, yeah, God just being like, cool, run this path, run this race. This is where I've got you. And I'm like, hey, okay, perfect.
The name of the podcast called Just Create.
Yeah, literally.
Creatives.
Literally.
In the creative space.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. So like, was there ever a moment where you were like, okay, God, like you've given me these skills. Like obviously you got to be good at filmmaking to make a business out of it.
Yeah.
Was there ever a moment where you were like, I don't want to just do this for money. Like I don't want to just make this a business. I want to serve you with this.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, like widely speaking, I'd probably say in my year 10 and 11 was probably when, still thinking business minded, was probably when things changed from, at that age I was kind of in the space of, hey, this YouTuber's released a new drop shipping course and you can find this cheap product on AliExpress and then you can resell it and now you can make money and put it in pocket. And I was in this space, I was like kind of just wanting to hustle to make money, just because I was like, hey, well, money can access this thing and that thing and that thing. But then it was probably at that age where there was kind of a shift in my mindset around money. Not entirely, still continued to change and develop, but that was sort of probably a key point where that started to be like, okay, I don't want to do this just to get rich and become a millionaire or whatever statistic or stat, but I want to actually do this to have meaning and value. And so at that point, the dream for business probably shifted to being something that was impactful. And even when I was in those final years of high school wanting to go into business, my heart was still to do like social enterprise is what I would have said. What I wanted to do was to do business to help people before making money for me. So there was that. But then I think within the creative sphere, it's been interesting even over the last few years of going, okay, cool, I don't even want to do this for my own name. And there's continual moments where God brings pride to the surface where I'm like, oh, no, I want my name in the credits of that, or I kind of want to be attached to that. And then he's like, why? And I'm like, oh, okay, that's not the right motives of heart. But I think it's been, within this last sort of couple years where I'd say God's really just continues to bring me to a place where all I want to do is create and serve him.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, hey, there's places I could go and things I could do, but if it's not glorifying him and growing his kingdom, like what's the purpose? What's the purpose in
That's
that?
awesome.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing it for yourself?
Doing what specifically?
Filmmaking. So you were working at the studio straight out of school?
Kind of. It's the studio is a weird space. It's hard to, I kind of explain it to people. I'm like, it's kind of documentary filmmaking one side, missionary the other. It's kind of halfway through. Like Jaeden, the guy who runs it, he talks about it being like a media mission space, where it's like we're really just missionaries on a mission to tell the stories of God's kingdom and doing it with a camera. And so, I even look at what I do now and I'm like, I'm a storyteller, and right now I use a camera. I don't think I'll probably always. I imagine days where I'll do more speaking or days where I write or see what it is that happens. But it's been a few. I mean, I've just finished studies, so I've just finished doing a Bachelor of Communications back home. But then there's been film bits and pieces through that, and then it would have been middle of last year, middle of 2024 when I started to properly do some work with Fantail. And then now being finished studies, now I'm pretty much looking at the journey of what it looks like to go semi full-time, looking at 3 to 4 days a week with them next year. Which is cool.
And so you're traveling around telling people stories. So like obviously here in Australia, and you're from New Zealand. So you were saying that have traveled a fair bit over the last few years.
Yeah, I've been so blessed. God's just opened some cool doors to travel initially, I mean, how deep do you want me to go into the story? It's a fun story.
Mate, you can go as deep as you
I
want.
don't want to yap for ages. But nah, initially at the start of my degree, I've always wanted to travel. I've always been drawn to the rest of the world and just culture and seeing that. But I never thought I was going to travel during studies. That was never sort of a thing that was on the cards for me. And then I remember being in my first year of studies at university, we had like a exchange expo where it's like they brought all the country options that our university was connected with internationally into a room and sort of had stands for each of them, and you could just go look and just look at some of the details. And I remember going with some friends to that. Ironically, like we went just as a joke, just to go walk around, and it was in one of the main spaces, and we walk around and we were like, oh, imagine if we went on exchange to like Spain and we went to like the beaches and the football, or like imagine going to this place of the world or this place of the world, and just like kind of picturing, what could it do? And we're kind of all predominantly talking about it around watching sport or traveling the world. And then I remember coming home and telling mum and dad about it, and they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then I kept going on about it, and I'd just come home and talk and just be like, oh, like imagine if I went to America or this part of America and did this and this and this. Like, oh, imagine if I did this. And then it got, after a couple of weeks, I think I was having another conversation with mum about it, and then she goes, are you actually being serious about this? Or are you just joking? Because she's like, if you're just joking, like that's fine, and I'm fine with that. But if you're being serious, like we should probably actually chat about it and see what it would actually look like. And I kind of realized that what had started just as ironic, like, oh, wouldn't this be fun? I was like now just starting to tell myself like, oh, an exchange should actually be a cool idea. And actually at the exchange expo, I'd seen this table in the back corner that had a sign that was like funded experiences. And I was like, oh, sounds cool. Funded. I don't have to pay for it. So I went over and chatted with them, and there was a couple trips going, but basically the premise was it's a scholarship, it's a funded group trip to a certain country. And so I was curious because it was also over the summer outside of university semesters, and so it meant that I could travel outside of study breaks, which I was intrigued by. But so then over a bit of time kept joking about this exchange idea, and then got to a place where I was like genuinely starting to consider going on an exchange, which was real cool. And then the funded experiences came out, and there was a trip to India for 6 weeks. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like I've never thought I wanted to go to India, but I've also never not. Like my grandparents growing up have done a lot of travel to India. And so I think my dad went when he was younger, and my aunties and uncles have been. And so it was a place that I was familiar with, but hadn't yet been or seen myself. And so I was like, well, I'll put my name down. Like I may as well apply and see what happens. There's no harm in chucking my name out there. So I applied for this 6-week trip to India, and then also in the background going on exchange and praying about it the whole time. And then I remember this night towards the end of my first year of uni, this night just at church, and I was worshipping down the back, and I'd been pretty set on exchange. Like I was like, cool, this is where God's brought me to. And then I was actually looking at the time going to a city where Jared and his family, who ran Fantail, were looking at relocating. And at that point, it had been probably a year since I'd last spoken to Jared, or maybe 6 months. I hadn't met him once or twice, hadn't really done too much with him, but I was like, oh, it would be cool if I was in closer proximity to where he was going to be. And I remember worshipping one night at church, and God was just like, hey, why are you going on an exchange? And I was like, oh, one, to travel, and two, like, I'm going to this place because then I can be closer to Jared, and then if I'm closer to Jared, then there's more of a possibility to work with him, and then yada, yada, yada. And then God was just like, what if you just messaged Jared directly and just asked if he had any travel coming up? And I was like, oh, that's crazy. Put it off for a couple of weeks because I was like, oh, that's a bit random. It was one of those things where, you write it on the bottom of your to-do list, and then you just like, you never actually get to it. There's always things more important. And in the meantime, I think I'd also been accepted to the India trip by this point, which was incredible. So now I'm like, well, I'm going to India in a month and a half. Like, that's crazy. And so starting to prep for this.
Is this your first time traveling?
First time to India, first time traveling by myself. I'd been to Indonesia when I was younger for a couple of weeks because my other grandparents did missions work in Indonesia. And so when I was growing up, they still lived over there. So I'd gone to visit them when I was like 7, but first time traveling in a long time, and first time like on my own sort of thing. And so I'd been accepted into this trip to India, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. That was a whole fun journey. So prepping for this trip to India, and then God goes, hey, what if you message Jared? And so it's probably a week before Christmas. I remember so clearly sitting in my room, writing out this message to Jared, just being like, hey, bro, I was going on exchange, thinking about that. God told me to message you. Do you have any travel coming up? That'd be, just wondering, exploring that option. And I remember right before I hit send, thinking about it, being like, okay, God, it would be cool if you've already said something to Jared. But like, I don't know if you would have, but it would be cool if there's like, you've been speaking to him as well. And so I sent him the message late on a Saturday night, and then woke up on Sunday the next morning. And I think I actually had a text and a missed call from him. And he's like, hey, bro, I was thinking about you yesterday. Like, let me know when you can chat. And I was like, oh, that's random. And so I gave him a ring, and then he kind of was like, hey, give me the rundown of what's been happening. Give me, what's God been speaking to you? And so told him the journey. And he goes, oh, that's really interesting. Me, my wife, and my 3 kids are looking at the option of potentially going to Papua New Guinea next year. And we've been praying about it and feel like we need to bring a 6th person along to the trip to film and capture the trip. And so he's like, yesterday afternoon I was praying and chatting with Holy Spirit about who that extra person should be. And so he goes, I prayed through everybody who I've either mentored or who's interned for me in a film capacity. So he's worked in film for a while, and so imaginably a fair few people on that list. And he goes, every single person Holy Spirit said no to. And then he gets to the end of his list and he goes, well, Holy Spirit, like, I don't have anyone left. You must have somebody, because my list is gone and you've rejected everybody. Like, who do you want me to bring on this trip? He just had this thought drop into his mind. He's like, oh, Jaeden from Hamilton. And his first reaction was like, I don't even know the kid. Like, I've met him once or twice. Like, what? That's crazy.
That's amazing.
And so he's like, okay, I'll sleep on it.
Yeah.
Like, I trust God. If this is you speaking to me, like, you'll make it clear. And so he goes to bed, wakes up the next morning with a message out of the blue from me. Probably hadn't messaged in 6 months. Out of the blue message from me, being like, hey, bro, do you have any travel coming up next year? I'd love to travel.
That's so awesome.
And just like incredibly just God aligning everything. And so that was where a lot of things started. And so then the future God steps for that to even line up with between semesters and study and all that to work. Then last year I went on the trip to India for 6 weeks, which was cool. And that was in and of itself an incredible experience, going to India on a secular trip as well, and knowing that India is a very spiritual place, but having the opportunity to go there with 23 other university students from around New Zealand, and over those 6 weeks to really share, both through words but also just actions, my faith. There was another Christian on the trip, or another couple we connected with, but another one I knew before going on to the trip, which was real cool. But right from the first day, we were just like, hey, look, we're happy to appreciate these spiritual experiences, but we're not going to participate in any of them. And that ruffled some feathers for some others on the trip initially, because they're like, oh, like, who you think you are to, like, you've been funded this whole way to come to India and you're not going to do this or that. But it meant that over the 6 weeks, we actually got to like share faith deeply with everybody on the trip through just natural conversations for literally hours, and pray for most of the people on the trip and just be safe people. Awesome. Right the way through, not by us trying to do anything extra, but just naturally by us just living faithfully as people got to see us, because we were living within literally sharing rooms for 6 weeks straight. Like, they're seeing us through the highs and the lows, through getting sick, through feeling like missing home, through all these things, and seeing the ways that we're reacting and interacting with different situations. Just really opened eyes on that trip for some of those people to what it really looks like to live faithfully. So that was cool.
That's so cool.
But then later in the year, Papua New Guinea happening, which was the first sort of big film experience for me. I'd worked on projects through school and done small stuff, but then to be able to live for 6 weeks in Papua New Guinea with Jared and his family and just grow in every capacity, like just to pick his brain and to be able to every single day pick up a camera and just go film or be editing or whatever. And that was probably where God started to light my heart more. Up until that point, I'd been like, hey, telling stories is cool. Telling this is, there's cool opportunities. I don't know what this could look like. But it was sort of on that trip where God was like, nah, like this is a space to be able to tell incredible stories for you. And then since then, have done some more travel. Came over to Oz again last year for Red Frogs, same as this year. And then this year I've been blessed to go on a couple trips overseas to Asia for missions trips with the camera as well, filming documentaries. And then back here in Australia for Red Frogs again, and hanging out and seeing what God wants to do.
I love it. That's such a good like journey. And it's what we're all about on this podcast. It's obviously Children of Light is God's given us a light, and it's how we being that light in wherever we've been placed.
Yeah.
You on that India trip, it's like you're like, oh well, like you got a chance to be a light in that, and that's what we're called to do. As Christians, it's easier to not be different and just fit in and not sort of share. But it's so awesome that like you've been able to grow and have some confidence in doing that.
Yeah.
And then tying a gift in as well with that, it's just perfect. God does amazing things.
God does do amazing things.
He lines things up better than we could have ever planned it out in our own head.
That's so true.
By far.
Yeah.
So you've been traveling around doing missions with video. Is that something you're going to continue doing in the future? Do you have any plans or dreams?
Yeah, I'm such a big dreamer. I feel like in every moment of every day, I'm always thinking about something, and often it's dreaming about something big. And I think I kind of mentioned it earlier, like God said to me, it's like, hey, I've given you a gift of storytelling. And even actually now with that context of having talked about travel, like when at the start of my degree, he said, I've given you this gift of storytelling and I'm going to be the one to teach you how to use it. It's been every single door over the last 3 years that he's opened up where I've grown. Like as much as, studying and doing a degree, there's been moments I've learned in that, but the true growth has come from, like Papua New Guinea, come from those other missions trips, come from other opportunities, even through New Zealand, where it's like God's just opened the doors, and being able to look back 3 years on from that when he said, hey, I'm going to be the one to teach you, and then to look at every single moment where he's been the one just opening doors and bringing me into spaces. I'm like, wow, God, you're so faithful. That's incredible. But yeah, so I think big picture, like, yeah, film's a place I really love at the moment. It's a space I love to, just use a camera to tell people's stories. But I think my heart is also so much wider than that. It's actually been something I've been pondering on recently. It's been like, I've got, Lord willing, 60 plus years still of life to live in like full surrender to him. And realistically, it's probably not going to be with a camera that whole time. But going, okay, cool, what does it look like to have these dreams and to run with pace and endurance, but also to run at a steady, like, you don't want to burn yourself out. Like, I don't want to, in 50 years, look back and be like, oh, dang, I peaked at 24. Like, that would be so sad. But then going, actually, God's got so much more for me, and probably directions and pathways I don't even have a clue of yet. But so, yeah, I think at the moment, film's a space that I'll continue to be in for a while. But I think there's also other creative projects on my heart. I think some cool things would be even like coffee table books, but I'm not sure. Do you know Humans of New York?
I don't.
Humans of New York. Real cool dude who tells just people's stories. Not Christian, but just telling wild stories of wild people. And the way he does it through photos and meeting people, I'm like, how cool would it be to do that, but like Christian? Like, how cool would it be to have a coffee table book where it's like beautiful portraits of people from around the world and then their stories of what God's doing through their life?
That's so good.
Where, like, yeah, podcasts around the place, or different social movements or brands or all these different things where it's like, God, I feel like God just keeps giving me ideas, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do with all of these. But it's even recently, it's been cool, I feel, and I'm still trying to figure out what specifically it looks like, but I feel like God's almost spoken to me recently and said, hey, like, I've actually created you to be a dreamer and for more than just yourself, which is interesting because I think a lot of people kind of have this space, which is perfectly fine and right. Like, there's not in any way anything wrong with it, but where it's like, I'm dreaming for that big idea. And then once I find that big idea for me, that's the one I run with. And I've just had this feeling on my heart always that there's not going to be this one big idea. I'm like, there's going to be lots of cool big ideas and there's going to be things I follow with, but I almost picture it like, hey, God's given me the gift to dream and to pilot these things. And I'll start something, and maybe I'll start it for half a year, for 2 years. And then I just have this feeling that then it's just going to bring the right people into the right spaces where I can almost gift people with these dreams and these gifts to be like, hey, here's this brand, here's this project, here's this space. Like, this is God connecting them with me and me with them to then go, hey, this is actually the space for them. And I feel like he's given me this gift to like pilot, and almost like, in music, when somebody like ghost writes songs for big artists, it's almost like God's like, hey, I'm just going to give you the dreams and you can just I feel like it's wrong to call them like ghostwriting the dreams, but sort of giving the start and the foundation and the possibility, and then going, cool, this is for you. Cool, this is for you. Cool, this is for this person here, this person. And so I feel like because of that, there's going to be so many different pathways and things.
That's great. You've really got all you need, which is faith.
Yeah.
But it's like you've seen that trusting him and like having faith that he's gonna pull through and lead you, and then he does.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Literally.
You just gotta keep serving him and dream your biggest dream and know he can make it happen.
That's so true.
like-
He literally says, I can do more than you can think, ask, or imagine.
Yeah.
Paraphrased. But I feel like I think of some pretty big things. And if God's like, nah, I can do more than that, I'm like, oh, I need to dream bigger.
That's so good.
Like, come on. Yeah.
Well, it's been good getting to know you. I just want to pray for you before we close.
I'd love that.
And then we want to find out where we can watch your documentaries and things that you've worked on.
I didn't share that.
And plug your podcast.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, so Lord, I just thank you for Jaeden. I just thank you for bringing him across that path. And I just thank you for just instilling in him the joy and the light that you have, that he can go into all these places and just be your love. That you are going to always be there for him as he's chasing the dreams you've given him. I just pray that you would be there as his rock, again, not burning out, but having the longevity to continue serving you passionately for his whole life. And yeah, I just pray that as he goes back to New Zealand and wherever he's traveled, that he would be able to just take the faith that he's walked through and instill it into the people that he meets. Amen.
Amen.
Good.
How good.
So your podcast is...
My podcast is called Just Create.
Yeah.
Except there's no E on the end of the create. And that's purely just a creative choice. People are always like, is it pronounced differently? Do I say it different? Is there any reason? And I'm like, no, just look. I think I deleted it when I was designing the logo and it looked cool.
Yeah.
But Just Create, you can find it on Spotify. I think it's on Apple Podcasts and probably anywhere you can listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's definitely on Spotify.
Yeah.
And then my films, they kind of get released around the place, but check out Fantail Studios for some great content, more than just stuff I've made. But then on YouTube, I think my YouTube name is Jaeds, Jaeds. And yeah, my first perfectionism documentary is on there.
Cool.
And then a couple other random pieces.
Yeah.
And then we'll see. That'll slowly fill up, Lord willing, with other films and projects.
That's so good. We'll watch the space.
Yeah,
see
watch
your
this
travels.
space. Yeah. And then one day, there's going to be a website, which
Yeah.
I haven't even bought the domain to. I probably should buy it before this podcast is released so nobody else buys it. But jaeds.studio will one day exist as a website as well.
Cool.
Yeah. No idea when. But
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for being our first guest on our podcast.
thanks for having me on. It's been a great conversation.
That's been great.
I'm excited to see this space go for you guys.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. We hope Jaeden's story is one that encourages you in your own journey, whether you're a filmmaker or in a different field altogether. If you have any questions, guest suggestions, or you just want to stay updated for our upcoming episodes, you can visit our Instagram page, childrenoflight.pod. Have a great week. Bless you guys.